been thinking a lot about effort lately. Not not the obvious kind, but the kind that you start to feel over time. Genuine effort. Everyone says that they want that deep connection, the closeness, understanding. They want consistency, but that deep connection, it actually requires something from ourselves. And honestly, it took me a really long time to understand that. I think when we're younger, connection can feel more based on emotion and chemistry, um, just that time spent together. But as time, goes on, the more I realize that connection is also built through consistency, through intentionality, through people continuing to show up for me over time. You know, we all want that closeness, but consistency, that's another story. Because connection, it sounds good, feeling understood sounds good. Having someone emotionally available sounds good, but actually maintaining connection, that takes consistency. It takes presence and attention. And consistency is where a lot of people start to fall off because everybody wants that deep connection until it starts requiring the effort, you know, because connection isn't just built through words, it's built through showing up repeatedly, through checking in and actually listening, through remembering the small things, to being present. And the thing is, I think that people can feel the difference, even if they don't say anything directly. People can feel when effort becomes inconsistent, when the attention changes, um, when the presence becomes optional. And sometimes it's not always, about a big dramatic change, it's small things like halfway listening, less interest, less intention. And over time, those small changes start creating big feelings. You can feel when someone is genuinely present, and you can feel when someone's just there. And those are two completely different experiences, because presence feels different when it's genuine, you know. And honestly, I think people can tell um, when someone is just there to be there versus someone there because they feel like they have to. The energy feels different, you know. And there are some people who know how to access connection. Um, they don't know how to maintain it because in the beginning, connection usually comes easy, right? The effort feels natural, the attention feels natural, showing up feels natural, but eventually, consistency becomes a choice. And that's the part that I don't think, people talk about enough, because maintaining connection, that requires consistency. And consistency is harder than chemistry. Chemistry can happen fast, but consistency, that takes intention. And I think that's why we start valuing consistency more as we gain life experiences because we realize that peace and effort and dependability, that emotional presence matter more than just temporary excitement. You know, chemistry is exciting, but consistency is where people are suddenly booked and busy. And over time, the lack of effort becomes visible, even in small ways. Like you start to notice the conversations are shorter. You're receiving less attention, less thoughtfulness, less emotional presence. And most people never say it out loud. You can just feel it. You feel the difference. And I think that's what makes low effort frustrating because effort tells people I care enough to show up, not perfectly, but intentionally. And people remember intentionality. We remember consistency. We remember thoughtfulness, that emotional presence much more than we remember big actions. And honestly, deep connection, it's not usually lost all at once. It can fade quietly through inconsistency, through lackluster effort, through lack of emotional presence. And honestly, people usually try to explain away the effort changes at first because nobody wants to immediately believe that they're not showing up for me the same anymore. So we try to rationalize it, um, with, maybe they're tired or maybe they're stressed or maybe it's just me overthinking it. Meanwhile, the feeling is getting stronger. And I think that people stay in disconnected situations way longer than they should, you know, because they're hoping that the effort that they once felt is going to come back, especially because they know what the connection used to feel like, and that part can be hard to let go. Trust me. I know it can be hard to let go. And eventually, people stop reacting to what you say and they start paying attention to what you consistently do because good intentions start feeling similar to maybe another time. And I think people underestimate how much emotional safety comes from consistency. Knowing someone will show up, follow through, be present, care consistently. That matters, especially now when genuine effort is rare, and maybe that's why consistency stands out so much because we're tired of half-ass connection, you know. I think real effort becomes more meaningful because life doesn't always give us a soft spot to land, right? There's disappointment, there's inconsistency, there's relationships that have taught us what emotional absence feels like. And so you start appreciating things differently, the small things differently, genuine presence differently. And that's why intentional effort, stands out so much because genuine consistency feels rare. Real emotional presence, that feels rare. People remember how consistency made them feel way longer than they remember an impressive moment, right? Connection, it doesn't just grow through feelings, okay? It grows through effort that people can actually feel. And that's just how I feel about it.